in some of the best top entrepreneur and in enterprise companies in the world. And they were here bringing all their knowledge and expertise to you. I want to make sure that you guys found value in that, because not only did you get those experts talking about HR, finance, you talk about so many different things, but Tongston's all about encouraging your entrepreneurship, and making you the best person you can to create value, influence, and profitability anywhere you go. So thanks to Tongston for all the effort it takes to bring all of us together globally, where we are reaching people from every corner of the world. Don't forget, we only have a couple more hours until our awards of who's going to be the big winner today from the 3 days. We have competitions happening, the Tease 2022 challenge happening, where you got to post and hashtag so we see your engagement online and how you're spreading the word. Knowledge is power. So you have the power. It's time to you to spread the knowledge. So we have all the speakers waiting. We're going to get right to it. Next, we're going to talk about a fireside chat with, I'm going to welcome up the moderator. Come on down, Emmanuel Adejoh, COO of Novateur, Nigeria. We can't wait to have you here. And I see you have a whole bunch of speakers in the room. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
All right, we're here. Thank you so much for being patient. We're so happy you're here. Thank you. We're going to hopefully get some comments and engagement. I'm your host, Rachel Muleman. I'll bring those comments to you after your session. I'm going to let Emmanuel take it away, and I'm going to hide in the back. Have fun.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Hello. Hi, Dr. Dixon. Hi, what's her name? It's called Debjani, right?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
You got it right.
Hi, Dr. Dixon. Welcome, guys. Welcome. It's been a great 2 days so far. Today being the 3rd day. I hope you guys can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Brilliant. We'll just shoot into it pretty much to discuss more about the nature of what operations management is, in terms of entrepreneurship. So, of course, today, as you know, the topic is out with the old, in with the new, the future of business, the future of operating models for business scalability. As we go on today, one of the things we're going to look at, or some of the things we're going to be looking at, would be around opportunities and challenges associated with the business automation, and also new thinking in relation to business optimization methodologies. Finally, we'll look at the implications of changing consumer behavior and needs for operating models. As you know, my name is Emmanuel Adejoh. I'm the CEO of Novateur, Nigeria. Novateur Nigeria is information technology and marketing communications company headquartered here in Nigeria with an African-based scope. Nice to meet you guys. Oh, welcome. Goodness, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Nice to meet you guys.
Sorry for running a little late. Yeah, thank you.
No, you're right at the nick of time. So just a minute, if we just get quick introductions from all three of you before we shoot in, that would be nice. So we'll go in order of arrival. So Debjani will be first, next off Dr. Dixon, and finally Goodness. So over to you, Debjani.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here today. My name is Debjani Mukherji. I'm based in India right now, and I'm in the middle of one of our biggest festivals, which is happening after 2 years. So you might just hear some background noise, although I'm trying my best to cut it out. And it's a Saturday evening for me. I lead strategic partnerships alliances. I'm a vice president with one of the largest edtech companies based out of US and India, and I lead strategic alliances for them. Been in the industry for 26 plus years. That, of course, gives away my age, and the fact that I've had the opportunity of working across a bunch of companies and a bunch of industries. Been with TalentSprint for about 3 years in this particular role, where I lead strategic alliances for the US and India. But before that, I had spent about 13 years in Microsoft, where I worked across various business strategy programs. And one of the key things that I worked on was on education, working very closely with the top institutions of India in helping them build the curriculum that would make their students more industry focused and industry ready. So that's about me. Glad to be here today.
Thank you so much. Next up, Dr. Dixon.
Thanks, Emmanuel. And please do call me Elsbeth. I feel a lot more comfortable with that than a formal title. Thanks, Emmanuel. So I started a career very different from the one I'm in now. I started my career as a scientist at the National Science Institute of South Africa. I'm South African, based in Johannesburg. And after about 12 years as a scientist, actually moved into the field that I'm currently in, which is leadership development. So I currently head the operations of Common Purpose, which is a global leadership development organization. I head the operations on the African continent, and I'm the CEO of the operations in South Africa. So it's been a very interesting career journey from the field of mathematics actually into this space. I retrained halfway through my career as a scientist, as a psychologist, and as a coach, and so on. So Common Purpose is currently delivering leadership programs in over 100 cities around the world. And we have here on this continent staff from 3 different countries, South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria. And so, yes, I've been with Common Purpose now for 16 years. That's who we are and what we do. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Elsbeth. Thank you. Goodness, please.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here, and thank you, Emmanuel, for this opportunity. My name is Goodness Aula. I'm a materials and metallurgical engineer by training. I've spent the larger part of my career in the oil and gas industry, working across Africa, the Middle East, Eastern, Western Europe, and currently in Australia. I have practiced mainly across the offshore and onshore industry, oil and gas industry, cutting across various disciplines of expertise. And in 2016, I ventured into starting one of the thriving oil and gas companies right now in the African oil and gas market. Starting with Nigeria, we started an office in Nigeria in 2016 and further expanded into Ghana. And we have a key focus on Africa, on the African markets. Over the years, we have also expanded into a few other industries like IT, mining, and training services. So I would stop at that for now, but I'm sure as we go ahead with the conversation, we will have more to say about ourselves and the industry in which we play. Yeah, thank you very much.
We've lost our moderator momentarily.
Yeah, I think Emmanuel is frozen.
Just frozen for a while. Yes.
Is it stable now?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Right. Well, bless the internet. Right, so just shoot into the questions quickly for today. Thanks, guys, for introduction. Thank you for, this is a very, very thorough bunch, proper real industry professionals. So quickly, in the topic we're discussing today in terms of operating models for business scalability, and discussing about the future of the direction in which that is. What are your personal experiences being on this sort of topic? I think we can just have like 1 minute responses, since we all have a full broad of experiences from leadership training to partnerships and brand communication, also to the oil and gas industries. I think we'll just go around quickly in the same order. So just share with you, what are your personal experiences in terms of operating models for business scalability?
I can go first. I've been in the industry for
Debjani.
about 6 years. Yeah, this is Debjani. And I've seen technology disrupting almost every industry vertical around me. And that has really led the education industry to rethink its strategy in terms of operations, everything. How do you do business in a world that has completely changed, where education has changed, the need for education has changed, the kind of education that has changed, how to educate people, how to build programs, everything's changed. So it's hugely disruptive, but that has also opened up huge opportunities. And the world is really
Right.
borderless.
Right. So technology makes the world completely borderless.
Absolutely.
Elsbeth?
I'm going to build on from where you are, Debjani, because obviously we're in similar industries. So I'm going to take you to Q2 of 2020. COVID restrictions had just come in. Our organization specializes in highly experiential training. Our leadership development is quintessentially about interpersonal engagement. And then came COVID. We spent Q2 completely reinventing ourselves using technology. So exploiting the full gamut of possibilities of a platform like Zoom, for example, to recreate experiential learning. So our whole organization globally went on pause in March 2022 to reinvent ourselves. So the unlocking the opportunities, I think, of technology, yes, very disruptive, Debjani, I agree with you. We had to completely reinvent ourselves, but there are enormous new possibilities in this space. So I think in the learning industry, the opportunity to migrate into much bigger geographies associated with the use of technology. So training, instead of being in a local city in a classroom, is now completely global. And that is being hugely embraced, particularly by the younger generation. So our youth and student market are really loving the opportunity to interact with each other around the world via the platform. So huge possibility for innovation and embracing the opportunity there.
Great, Elsbeth. Goodness, please.
Yeah, so piggybacking on that, I would say the experience in my industry has not been far from that at all. You know, we have seen technology help us do more with less. You know, it has driven effectiveness, it has driven safety. One of the key factors you would want to consider from an engineering point of view is safety on every project. But with the use of technology and advancements in innovation, we are able to do more using tools like robotics, artificial intelligence, you know, learning more about data, you know, that we generate constantly. We have seen production, we have seen effectiveness and efficiency increase massively because of technology, as well as borderless operations, which we would I would also talk more about later. Yeah, so I think we can go on and on and on how much technology has changed our industry today.
Absolutely. Before I'll touch on the essence of technology in the new age of business operations. Elsbeth, what do you think the various regions can leverage in the trends that we're seeing right now? And how can we also innovate? You know, you have your experience centered at common purpose is in training of leaders. You know, what are the key elements you think, you know, in the post-COVID era that we can leverage on in terms of adopting this new technology?
I think that what we see across the African continent is huge appetite for training, and especially for international exposure. So, you know, many young Africans have the aspiration to broaden their horizons globally, and not everybody is able to get on a plane and travel abroad and do that. And so leveraging off that appetite, and particularly Nigeria, those of you who know that part of the world well, we have run global student leadership activities, and the biggest take-up outside of the UK was Nigeria. So there is, you know, the appetite, the market is there in the youth market for the international opportunities that young people are looking for. The other factor, obviously, is we can't assume ubiquitous availability of the infrastructure. So in many countries across our continent, young people are still experiencing the challenge of unavailability of connectivity. So I think, coming to the issue of where governments can become involved, making infrastructure, making communications ubiquitously available for young people, and then allowing that appetite that we see so huge on our continent to be unleashed.
Fantastic, Elsbeth. Great the thing you mentioned about government, and that takes me to my next question. In terms of for policymakers, particularly, goodness, if you could just come in here and what do you think policymakers can do in terms of shaping this new industry or this new direction of the industry? Elsbeth, I just mentioned about the essence for government intervention in terms of critical infrastructure. So, what do you think policymakers can do? What are the quick wins that policymakers can do in shaping this new industry? Hello, goodness.
Oh, sorry, I was mute. I think it's essential that policymakers are forward thinking. There's a tendency of being stuck, with the old patterns of doing things. I know part of the things we're discussing today is being away with the old and embracing the new. Because, so we can do the same things, but we can do them more effectively, adopting technology. And a lot of policies that, run different industries and different economies have been there for a long time, and reviewing some of these policies, changing them, sometimes can be quite a rigorous process. But if we understand and appreciate the essence of making laws and making policies that foster innovation and foster development and adopt technology, we would see these industries thrive and leverage on them. I'll give a very good example. As little as adopting electronic signing of documents, this is something that has taken a huge toll on different industries, because when you deal with governmental organizations across globally, many of them have set systems and standards where you need to have physical signatures. If you go to a bank and you want to sign a check, you have to sign it manually. But these days, with innovation and technology, we have a lot of solutions to that makes the system more effective, that makes it faster. However, adopting or embracing such technologies remains a challenge in this day and age. So policymakers must start looking into existing policies and creating new ones that embraces new technologies in order to drive effectiveness in the industries. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as simple as electronic signature, it's still far-fetched for people to adopt such. So of course, the more government begin to emphasize the need for this push into the new, the more it now becomes a new normal. Thank you, goodness. Quick one, Debjani.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting question.
Yes.
And when I think about it, I can answer it at a micro level, and then at a macro level is when it gets more complicated. Now, at the micro level, you really worry about, when in a world where education is getting borderless, degrees are being offered online, various people from all over the world are joining the same program. And the faculty is one part of the world, the students are all across the world learning through their devices. That's the reality of today's world. Things like, how do you make sure that the quality of education is not compromised? How do you make sure that the degree that is being offered doesn't lose its value because it's being offered in a certain different way? How do you make sure assessments are being done the right way? Those kind of stuff become more critical, and those are the things that the policymakers need to look at. Especially in a world where technology is moving so fast and business models, everything is moving and changing almost by the hour. And the needs and demands of the industry is also rapidly transforming. But when you look at the macro level, the global level, and I really don't have an answer for you here, and I'll just tell you about what I feel when I think about this. The talent that is being created is really fueling a global industry, especially when you think in the context of India. India is the hub for talent, which fuels industries all over the world, whether it's in Europe or it's in the US or any other part of the world. Now, the policymakers in India would have certain guidelines that they will follow, which will ensure that students, educators, faculty, everything follow those guidelines and education of a certain standard is achieved. But I'm not sure how are we going to make sure that when these same students go abroad to work or to study, the clash of guidelines might happen. Maybe it is now time to start thinking of a global education order where certain global guidelines are issued, which will ensure that we really live up to a truly borderless world. So I don't know whether I'm able to answer your question, but that's really what I think about this.
Right, Debjani. I mean, there's always been that gap in terms of the difference between regions and their mode and method of education and curriculum. As depending on how you move in terms of your professional ladder, you would meet different levels and different exposures for which you are able to learn differently, and also sort of merge all your knowledge. So, for example, you get college level students who are in Sri Lanka who operate optical fibers by getting to the pit and connecting the optical fibers. In another part of the world, you get people who just learn it based on PowerPoint slides without getting practical experiences. So I think the more we get digital, the more we expose ourselves into new method of knowledge, we then see our best to experience practical experience of technology implementation. I think the more we push, we'll see how it is. All right. Just further to what you just said, Debjani. I know TalentSprint, for example, you guys have like an AI platform for which you are able to have like a digital learning experience, connecting high-end academics with industry-leading practitioners. Now, of course, in the new age, we see that roles like chief technology officers are being changed into chief digital officers. So the question is, what has your institution experience been, including other game-changing initiatives that you have experienced so far?
Okay, so I think digital transformation has completely changed the way people do business now, or completely changed what customers really expect, right? The whole customer experience. Now, I can talk to you a little bit about what has happened to us over the past 2 years, the transformation that has happened to us, and part of it has been expedited by the pandemic as well. We have two lines of business, two critical lines of business. One is the pure executive education, where we work with the top academic institutions of the world, the likes of Carnegie Mellon and University of Michigan, and we bring really top-class executive education, which we offer to learners all over the world. But till about 2 years back, we were not working with Carnegie Mellon or University of Michigan. We were primarily focusing on the top academic institutions in India, because our focus was a lot narrow. But the pandemic happened and we all realized that education for faculty, everybody, it's no longer limited to a country. It can be from a degree from a Carnegie Mellon doesn't require a student to go to Carnegie Mellon. You can do it in a very different way, and technology permits that. The business operating models all permit that right now. So that is something that happened to us. The other important thing that happened to us was how we started looking at the second line of business, which was programs that we had for young learners. Till about 3 years back, these programs for young learners were very, very focused, boot camp kind of programs, which were delivered in person. They would either come to our campus, or we would go to the colleges where they are, or to a location. Very, very experiential programs, but delivered in person. But then, of course, that was no longer possible when the pandemic happened. So everything moved to online. But when you're moving online to the platform, which you mentioned, our platform, iPearl.ai, which used to be only used for executive education earlier, then became the foundation and the backbone for all programs, even the programs that were earlier delivered in person. And we had to make sure that while we were moving to a different model of engagement and education, the quality is not compromised. For this particular category of learners, it was very, very critical to have a very high touch, high experiential model, and that is not compromised. And that was possible. That was always possible on the platform. It's just that we never thought that that would work, and it worked beautifully. And because it worked and because it got accepted by everyone, we also opened up the similar programs we started offering in other geographies as well. For example, today we started off with a program in India for women engineers to build a pipeline of technically strong and confident engineers from colleges in India, girl colleges in India. The same program we now took to the US. We expanded the definition of diversity, and we opened it up to include all kinds of minority population, training them to become high class programmers, right? So that is not something that was thought of earlier. Probably 3 years back, we couldn't think of a model where we would be doing a program like this through our platform, working with students somewhere in the US, and they're dispersed all over the US. And that also opened up our opportunity and potential to work with faculty across the world. We were not just working with students across the world, we were also working and bringing in faculty across the world. So the quality of the degrees, the quality of the programs, the kind of partnerships that we had all increased. It's dramatically changed. The other thing that happened was it opened up a different line of business for us. And that is because the platform that we have, it's a homegrown in-house platform, AI powered, state-of-the-art platform, all of that is fine. And that was a platform we were using for executive education. But when the pandemic happened, academic institutions in India didn't know how they would continue with their regular programs, like the MBA programs where they would have cohorts in class attending in campus. Life couldn't just stop for 2 years, right? They would run into losses if they do that. So they adopted our platform to offer these programs. So think about these. These are not executive education. These are not additional education programs or upskilling or reskilling programs. These are actually bread and butter degree programs that people go to top institutions to learn. Those became online. And in the process, platform as a service became another business model for us. So I think these are the three key things that happened to us and how we have leveraged digital transformation. But of course, at the core of that, technology plays a very critical role. At the core of that, how we look at business strategies play a very critical role. The shift is now in terms of how do we adopt technology and adopt it in a manner that we are focused on efficiency. The customer is at the center of anything that we build, and any decisions that we take are data driven. So that's what has happened to us.
Right, thank you, Debjani. I think one of the things that it's worthy of note, it's that TalentSprint is able to change the direction of thinking in order to suit the market, and also they with the essence of technology, they're not rigid. They're able to be flexible to adopt new ways in order to suit their market and also improve again the business model and business scale. And thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you, Elsbeth. Now I know that what's called common purpose. It's critical of what you guys do is developing leaders, both emerging and senior leaders, to be able to cross boundaries, solve complex problems, and also produce change. Now, how is this? Just share a bit of your institutional experience in doing all of this, particularly. You're working on two different edges. Of course, there are senior leaders. There are also emerging leaders. Sometimes some of the troubles we see, or the averse to change, like Goodness mentioned earlier, is from the senior leaders who are unwilling to adopt new models, particularly business automation. That's some of the things. So just share with us some of your experience in terms of, as an institution, working with emerging leaders and also working with senior leaders, because they are two wide opposite side of the curve. So I think you're mute.
Thank you. Thank you. You touched on a great point, Emmanuel. Absolutely. We work right across the spectrum from youth leaders, age 18, all the way through to folk at peak of career. So executives around the world coming on our programs. And there's a lot of difference in that band. I think the core concept that we work with is that the challenges in the world, the challenges in our organizations cross boundaries, but leaders usually don't. So leadership is so often thought of as a hierarchical idea. You know, I'm appointed as a leader into a position. And so we try to move folk from that to recognizing that if they develop a certain set of characteristics, personal attributes, then they can exercise leadership irrespective of whether they're formally appointed. So this is really, really helpful for young people who very often don't hold senior positions, obviously, to recognize that they have agency. And so our organization has evolved significantly in how we do this. So to start with, we used to run in-person programs for folk from many different backgrounds. And here's the key point for your senior leaders. We would bring together individuals from the private sector, the public sector, and the civil society or not-for-profit sector. And what we find is then that when people are exposed to the views, the life experience of others very different from themselves, it opens the mind quite dramatically to new possibilities that they had not imagined or experienced before. If I can take an example of a local program here working with senior leaders in the South African context, we might have a senior engineer from our National Science Institute with a journalist, with a dancer, with a traditional health practitioner from a rural area outside of the city, all together on the same program. And there I think it's really possible to shift the minds of senior leaders who, as Goodness said to us earlier, otherwise sometimes get very stuck in old paradigms. We know young people are far more receptive to change. So that's been a key feature of the programs, bringing folk together. But we've needed to evolve, and I'm with you there, Debjani, is that contextual factors have affected how we do this so much. Over the period of the global crash, the end of the last decade, the end of the previous decade, 2008 to 2010, we found that a lot of institutions, because their budgets were so tight, were not really willing to participate in these public programs and wanted in-house training designed specifically for themselves because they felt that with their very limited budgets, they could get better return on their investment. So the need to be agile, I think, in our industry is enormous. It's true in all industries. So a major change happened for us then, where we moved from not only public programs to in-house programs as well, designed specifically for the needs of certain organizations. And then obviously the most recent shift has been the shift from largely in-person training, deeply experiential, to using the digital platforms that we now use to mediate training. But we are finding that many of our clients are wanting to go back to in-person training for the depth of interpersonal experience that we're able to create. So listening really carefully to the client space. These are old lessons. There's nothing new here, but tracking the appetite, I think, particularly as we emerge from COVID now, there are so many folk who in their private lives and in the workspaces are wanting to get back to interpersonal engagement. So we find that in the first 6 months of this year, we did almost no interpersonal training. Since July this year, more than half of our training has gone back to interpersonal training at the client's request. So agility. I think being able to adapt, being able to have a set of tools, techniques, platforms, and so on that one can deploy, and then tracking where the need is in the external environment has been, across decades, I think, what has held our organization firmly on course. So I hope that helps a little bit of the differences perhaps between senior and emerging, but the tools that are available to us to address that.
Right. Thank you so much. And just a quick one, Goodness. You mentioned earlier, you being in Australia, and of course you lead an oil and gas firm in Africa. What are also some of your experiences in terms of, as an institution, what are some of your experiences in terms of managing the operations, from Australia, of course, and also for what is being done in Africa?
Yeah, I think for us as a business and the industry at large, we we are one group that have really experienced this move of innovation and technology, whether from the COVID period or prior to that. But I would say the experience of COVID and all that gave a whole paradigm shift to the industry. Prior to 2020, a lot of companies were already thinking ahead about borderless operations. Previously, in my past projects, I have had to sit across different countries and run projects across the globe. You know, sit in Dubai, you're running a project in Russia and Germany, you know, using technology as a platform for sharing documents, for, you know, working with teams, various teams and all that. But that trend was still pretty slow until COVID hit. And for instance, in Nigeria, while I was working in other countries, it was easier to work at that level. But in Nigeria, you wouldn't, prior to COVID, you wouldn't have a formal meeting with maybe a government institution online. You know, that's something that we're used to. It's considered that, you know, you would probably have to come and do a physical presentation. You would probably have that interpersonal experience. But after the shutdown of, you know, the global shutdown and everything, everybody learns to adopt technology as a new way of operating. And you realize even the old institutions now are beginning to find new ways to do certain things, like having meetings, presentations, and you realize you can do business globally now without necessarily hopping on a plane to, you know, to meet the people you're partnering with. There's also the challenge and the risk of having to deal with people. And, you know, while I was listening, we talked about ensuring the quality of education or the quality of degrees that are offered across the globe. Here we also try to manage the risk of, you know, fraud, scam, and all these things while you're working online. But the point is this: the more we continue to embrace this new way of living, this new way of doing business, we also adapt ourselves into understanding how to manage the risks that are associated with this new way of transaction. I'll give you an example. If I have to transact a business with somebody far in Siberia that I've never met before, by the time you get online with the person, by the time you start having various presentations and discussions, from your experience and your knowledge of the industry, you're able to ascertain if it's a genuine transaction or not a genuine transaction. Let's not talk about other technological tools, from facial recognition tools and all that, once you're able to pick the identity of the person you're doing business with. So I think in our industry now, there's similarly a higher level of assurance, you know, when it comes to the use of digital technologies in doing business, and it has made a whole lot of difference. For us as a company also, we started chasing an objective prior to COVID, just before COVID, as though we knew that it was going to happen. We chased the goal of achieving 90% automation of every single process in the company. I mean, every single process, including administrative process, HR processes, you know, financial processes. And we said we're going to automate everything. And when we started then, it felt impossible. But COVID made it even happen faster than we expected. So now we can do a lot of things that we normally do, even if it's a visitor coming to the office and signing at the reception desk, that you know, signing in. Now we can use various tools that helps us pick data without necessarily doing it manually. Yeah, that's a little bit of what we have done within our industry.
Fantastic. Thank goodness. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. It means that you are very much prepared for, of course, for the COVID era. All right, we're doing very well with time. Just 2 questions before we wrap up quickly. And as we've all discussed and shared so what our industries are doing or our institutions are doing, and this question now is directed to Elsbeth. How can resources be mobilized, you know, including capital, of course, to enable access and also to enable scaling? What are the ways you advise, whether it is because, of course, transforming to a digital and automated system requires a certain level of resource, whether it is physical capital or also relationship capital. So what's your advice? Sorry, I think you're on mute again.
Yeah, I'm on mute again. Yeah. When we talk about mobilizing resources, one thinks first of, you know, dollar signs and mobilizing financial resources. But one of the things that Common Purpose has been extremely successful in mobilizing is the resource of leaders in society. So in the training environment, our focus has been on bringing the voices of leaders from across the world into the training so that they're sharing their own experiences, sharing their leadership learnings over many, many years. And I think that's a very neglected resource, I think, is the resource of experience in society. We find that leaders in society are very, very willing and very, very prepared to join us and share their experience. And they, in turn, learn a lot from that. So mobilizing collaboratively the human resource that is around us, I think, is a very, very unrecognized and underutilized mechanism in the training world. That would be my key contribution to resource mobilization. It's all around us.
Right. So that's pretty much human resource, and that brings just a quick response from Debjani. At TalentSprint, what's TalentSprint doing in terms of human resource mobilizing that?
Okay. One, of course, what Elsbeth just talked about, we're doing the same thing. We have access to the thought leadership across the world, and we are mobilizing that. The other thing that we are also doing is making sure that, incrementally, technology is fast changing. And technology, as technology changes, upgrading, adapting to that technology is going to be very important, right? So we do have a task force in place which works very closely with the human resource, the external human resource that's getting created, which gives us some visibility in terms of how we need to keep innovating, growing, changing as a company so that we can continue to ride the tech curve. That is another thing that we do very well. These are two very important factors. Of course, I think thought leadership mobilization is the most important thing that everybody is doing today. And another thing that we all are doing, and what's an important realization for all of us, is just as education has become borderless, education is also now included as part of all life experiences. Gone are the days when students would just study when they were in school and college, and then they start working, and then they learn on the job, and that's all they learn. Now, even someone who's 20 years into a job wants to learn. And that learning, so what is very critical is ensuring that at every stage of a learner's journey, we mobilize the opportunities. So opportunity mobilization is also very important.
Okay. Thank you. You just went into my next question, which is basically the future of the industry in terms of automation, and that's what you've pretty much jumped into. So I'll just allow Elsbeth and Goodness just in very quick words. What do you think is the future of automation in operations? In very quick words.
Okay,
Elsbeth first.
Okay,
Very, very quickly, I think being data-driven, you used those words earlier, Debjani. I think we're looking very closely at who is collecting data of all sorts of kinds and using that to underpin the decision-making at the moment. Data-driven is the words I would add.
Right, data-driven. Of course, every decision in this age must be data-driven. Every decision must be data-driven. Goodness?
Yeah, I think I agree with Elsbeth about being data-driven. For my industry, I would say there's also going to be a heavy influence of artificial intelligence and robotics. Because when you look at the future of the industry, you realize that the data that is being generated constantly, we generate tons and millions of data from operations, or to whether you're looking at health conditions of machines to operations of plants and machinery, you realize that this data, being able to utilize them to make intelligent decisions is hinged on effective machine learning, and we incorporate artificial intelligence solutions to to make these systems more effective. So we realize that today there's this merge, or there's this merger between artificial intelligence and the old systems of operation. So we are making intelligent systems that help us operate more effectively to achieve greater quantum of results we do.
Right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting session. Really interesting and very engaging and eye-opening, very insightful. We'll just take a quick question before we shut off. And the question is from Adejoh, Elijah. And the question is, how can you develop a business model that provides built-in protection from competition? Anyone can just take that question. Anyone that understands is best.
By continuously innovating so fast that competition never can catch up with you.
That's right. Uniqueness
continuous improvement.
Uniqueness of your product or service, keeping ahead. Absolutely.
Right. Uniqueness, the USP is always still the bestseller. Goodness.
Yeah, I think understanding what the market needs is another aspect, because developing a product is one, developing a product that provides a solution is another thing. So when you meet specific needs, then you're ahead of the curve and the competition.
Right, meeting the needs of your customer is all. I mean, we're all in business for customers, and like Debjani said earlier, be a thought leader. Think ahead of your competitors. Think ahead of your customers and serve them what is required. So thank you guys so much. Do really appreciate your time, and I'll pass over to the host.
How you doing? What a great panel. Thank you, experts. We appreciate your knowledge and your